What's up guys, in this video we're going to take a look at Amber Heard's new life in Spain after reports that she's completely quit Hollywood. The shocking news that Donald Trump was just found guilty of SA in a defamation trial, and Prince Harry's ghostwriter coming out to expose the truth behind his memoir. First up, Amber Heard is back in the news after reports that she has quit Hollywood altogether. She's since been photographed going for a run on the streets of Madrid, which is somewhere she relocated to months ago along with her daughter Una. Amber was seen wearing a white tank top, dark grey leggings, and black tennis shoes while she was going out for a bit of exercise. These photos are really interesting because they finally give us a glimpse into her quiet life in Spain. A source close to the actress said that she couldn't wait to leave the US with her daughter after the trial. She now has a new energy since she's been living in Spain, where she gets a lot more privacy. The trial was also very stressful for her, and she was exhausted and disappointed at the verdict. She also says that she was mistreated, so that's why she wanted to start fresh out of the country and put all of that behind her. Also, it does help that she's bilingual as well and can speak Spanish, which is one of the biggest reasons why she wanted to live there long term. At first, she was rumored to be living in a rented house on the island, but since then she has moved permanently to a new home outside Madrid. Before a settlement was reached after the defamation trial, it was said that she was spending most of her time living in Europe anyway, probably because she liked the idea of being somewhat anonymous. Another reason she moved is because of her daughter. After the trial ended, she spoke to Savannah Guthrie and said, "I just get to be a mom, like a full-time mom, where I'm not having to juggle all these calls with lawyers." In July last year, Amber sold her home in Yucca Valley for $1.1 million, which is nearly double what she paid for it. Then in October, she was photographed on a beach in Mallorca with her girlfriend Eve Barlow. We don't know the status of their relationship right now, but it doesn't exactly look good. Eve is currently staying in LA where she works as a writer, and it seems like the two of them have kind of broken up. In December, Eve posted an essay on Substack saying that she was searching for optimism at the end of a life-altering year. She wrote, "Strength has to be renourished and revitalized in ourselves, often alone." Now obviously that could mean a few different things, but it does kind of sound like she's talking about a breakup. As for Amber's return to acting, well, that's still a big question mark. According to an inside source, she isn't in a hurry to return to work or to Hollywood, but she will probably come back when the time is right for the right project. As far as we know, she hasn't worked at all since filming Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in 2021. 2 weeks ago, audience members at CinemaCon were actually able to view the first trailer in an exclusive screening, and some of them were pretty shocked to see that Amber's character Mira actually made it into the movie. Apparently, it was a brief cameo during a battle scene. It's not a big role, but she's definitely there. During the defamation trial, she testified that her part in the film was significantly cut down after Johnny Depp's legal team called her claims a hoax. She said, "I fought really hard to stay in the movie. They didn't want to include me in the film." But later on, the head of DC Films, Walter Hamada, was called to the stand to talk about her diminished screen time. He claimed that the size of her role was determined in the early development of the script, and it was mostly cut down due to a lack of chemistry between Amber and Jason Momoa. Now this might turn out to be a good decision given the fact that they spent $200 million making the sequel. By comparison, the original Aquaman movie was working with the exact same budget, and they managed to rake in more than $1 billion at the box office. So there is always a lot riding on these kinds of superhero movies. But as the film was going through post-production this year, it actually wasn't performing very well at test screenings. An insider named Viewer Anon described the consensus of Aquaman 2 to be boring, not as good as the first, and potentially one of the worst DCEU movies ever made. And that's even after it went through half a dozen test screenings. Another insider called Big Screen Leaks corroborated their report and said, "It brings me no joy to back him up and tell you that test screenings for this film have not been good. Really hoping one fixes this movie before December." So judging by those harsh reviews, all we can do is wait and see what DC has in store. Alright, so moving on to some of the biggest news to come out of the week. Donald Trump was just found guilty of SA. These allegations were brought against him by writer E. Jean Carroll, who's now been awarded $5 million in damages. The former president is planning to appeal the decision and will not have to pay the damages so long as the case is on appeal. But either way, this is still a massive win for Jean Carroll. She held hands with her lawyers as the verdict was read and then expressed relief in the jury's decision, saying that the world finally knows the truth now. This case stems from an incident that happened way back in the 90s in a dressing room of a Manhattan department store. After it happened, Carroll said that Trump defamed her by branding her as a liar and sought to harm her reputation. She referenced one of his posts on Truth Social, where he said that her claims were a complete con job, a hoax, and a lie. In a written statement, Carroll said she sued Trump to clear her name and to get her life back. She wrote, wrote, "This victory is not just for me, but for every woman who has suffered because she was not believed." Her attorney followed that up by saying that she hoped this case would prove nobody is above the law, not even the President of the United States. The 9-person jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. To find him liable, they were required to reach a unanimous verdict. In response, Trump called their decision a disgrace and said, "I have absolutely no idea who this woman is." In fact, he said that she made up the allegations to try and increase sales of her memoir, as well as hurt him politically. He also said that he could not have done that to her because she was not his type. So that's really all you need to know about his defense. As for Carroll's version of events, the details are incredibly disturbing. She said she bumped into him at Bergdorf's while he was shopping for a gift for another woman. She agreed to help him pick out a gift, and the two of them looked at some lingerie before he coaxed her into a dressing room. At that point, she said that he slammed her head into a wall and forced himself on her. These are the details that she vividly remembers, despite the fact that she could not recall the precise date or the year that the attack occurred. Trump's legal team tried to poke holes in her story and question the plausibility of everything, considering that she never reported the incident to police or screamed while it was happening. The only other people she told were 2 of her friends, but they were sworn to secrecy. At the time, she worried that he would use his fame and wealth to retaliate against her if she ever came forward. So why did it take her almost 25 years to break her silence? Well, a lot of it came down to the 2017 allegations against Weinstein, which closely followed the rise of the Me Too movement that same year. Carroll decided to go public with her account while Trump was still president, even though it wreaked havoc on her career. She received mountains of online hate and threats from his supporters. Thankfully, she wasn't alone. 2 other women testified in the trial and claimed that Trump did something similar to them decades ago. A journalist named Natasha Stoyanov said that he cornered her at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida back in 2005. She claimed that he forcibly kissed her for a few minutes until a butler interrupted the whole scene. Another woman named Jessica Leeds testified that he kissed her and put his hand up her skirt on a flight in 1979. So even though these accounts go back years and years, they acted as a sort of support for the other claims. And that's probably why the jury reached their decision so quickly. But regardless of the verdict, Trump might be able to make it out of this relatively unscathed. Because this was a civil case, he wasn't really facing any criminal consequences, and there was never a threat of prison. Of course, his core supporters are already condemning this decision on social media. They're saying that this legal battle is just another way that his opponents are trying to undermine him. And at the moment, he is still the frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination. If anything, he's just going to use this case as a stepping stone in his campaign. But it's far from the end of his legal battles. He was recently charged with falsifying business records related to a 2016 hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. He was then charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records and conspiracy. On Monday, a judge barred him from making public evidence and other material related to the case. This came after concerns that Trump would inappropriately use the material or post the information on social media, which is something he's done a whole lot of. After the hearing in Manhattan, he flew to Florida to give a speech, all the while ignoring a plea from the judge to refrain from discussing the case. He told his supporters, "I never thought anything like this could happen in America. I never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it." He went on to claim that prosecutors were not able to make a case against him, and the entire country is going to hell. So that says everything you need to know about the case. Alright, now let's talk about Prince Harry's ghostwriter finally speaking out about his memoir. In an op-ed piece for The New Yorker, J.R. Mooringer spoke out about what it was like to work with the Duke of Sussex. He said that at first he had quite a few reservations because Harry wasn't sure how much he wanted to say in his memoir, and that was a bit concerning. Another reason that he hesitated so much was because of the media. He knew the book would set off a storm, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to be a part of that. But Mooringer eventually agreed to work with him because he found his story both relatable and infuriating. He thought that the way he'd been treated by everyone around him was grotesque. They worked together all throughout 2020, and he quickly realized that Harry wanted the book to be one giant rebuttal to every lie ever published about him. This led them to have a massive argument during the editing process because they just couldn't agree on one particular line in the book. The passage recounts a story from Harry's time serving in the British Army. He'd been going through grueling military exercises where he was captured by soldiers who were pretending that they were going to torture him. He was then kicked, punched, and deprived of sleep and food. At one point, one of his fake captors even threw in a vile dig about his late mother, Princess Diana. And apparently, Harry came up with a very witty comeback to this line, and he so badly wanted that to be included in the book. He felt that people had always questioned his intellect, so he wanted to prove them all wrong. But Mooringer was dead against it. He didn't think the line should be included because he found it both unnecessary and just insane. He said, "I was exasperated with Prince Harry. My head was pounding, my jaw was clenched, and I was starting to raise my voice. And yet some part of me was still able to step outside the situation and think, this is so weird. I'm shouting at Prince Harry." Later on in the essay, he also writes about the experience of the book leaking and the rumors that spread quickly about what was actually in the memoir. A bookshop in Madrid started selling copies of it 1 week early, which he says sparked a wave of news stories based on bad translations from Spanish to English. But once the English language version was released, things only got worse. He said, "Facts were wrenched out of context, complex emotions were reduced to cartoonish idiocy, innocent passages were hyped into outrages, and there were so many falsehoods." He described the reaction as one of a frenzied mob and said that people questioned everything about the book, including the accuracy. To make matters worse, his identity was leaked. After that, his car was followed as he drove his son to preschool, and a writer even showed up at his house outside of his window. It was then that he finally understood what Harry was going through. He said, "One morning of what Harry had endured since birth made me desperate to take another crack at the pages in Spare that talk about the media." The essay ends with Moeringer and his wife attending a book party thrown by one of Harry's friends, and he reveals that they both teared up during Harry's toast. So even though things got very out of hand, he clearly doesn't regret the experience that he had working with Harry and deciding to write the book. Plus, all that controversy likely helped the book skyrocket in sales. It sold more than 3.2 million copies worldwide after just 1 week of publication, and 1.6 million copies in the US alone. So no matter how people really feel about it, Spare is still considered one of the best-selling memoirs of all time. What do you guys think about this story? Please let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.